Good morning, traders. I'm Emily Bonney, the CEO of the Investment Banking Institute and your host here at NewsWare's Trade Talk. Joining me is trading anchor Bill Olson, who brings more than 30 years of institutional trading experience to our program. At Trade Talk, we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Today is Monday, July 7th. We jump back into trading after an extended holiday weekend following a green end to last week. All three major indices notched solid gains on Thursday, and the S&P 500 and NASDAQ both hit record highs. The S&P 500 advanced 51 points, or 0.83%, to end at 6,279 points. The NASDAQ climbed 208 points, or about 1%, to finish at 20,601 points. The Dow neared its record, adding 344 points, or just more than 0.75%. Bill, let's get into Monday's action with what is happening in the markets this morning.
I guess, good morning, Emily. I'm watching the S&Ps, a little modest weakness, down 0.18%. Not terrible. I mean, the market's kind of like awaiting more details from the White House because, President Trump is expected to, send out a bunch of letters today, which are going to be declaring new tariff rates on some countries. We want to see what these tariff rates will be. We want to see what countries are getting these letters. Remember that 90-day pause, it ends this weekend, July 9th. But over the weekend, it was announced, any tariffs are not going to really go into effect until August 1st. Now, that's like 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out. According to Scott Bessent, he doesn't kind of really feel that they're going to go into effect until Labor Day. So maybe that's even further out. So, there's a lot of questions here on these on the tariffs and trade policies of the U.S., which we hope to get a little clarification from these letters that are going out today. What else do we see? President Trump, he's hosting a state dinner tonight for Israeli Prime Minister this evening. They're going to be meeting during the day. Trump is is scheduled to sign some executive orders today. We'll have to see what that's about. He's going to be talking, so you got to keep that alert on Trump running all day long today. What else do we have? Tesla shares. Listen, they're weaker this morning. They were, what are they down now? They're down about 6. They're staying down lower, about 6%. Remember, he came out and he said that he's creating a new political party if that big, beautiful bill passes. Well, it got passed and it got signed into law. And so he created his new political party, and that's kind of taken his eye off the ball at Tesla, which is, kind of why the stock's trading lower this morning. OPEC over the weekend, they delivered a higher than expected production hike. So, that's causing some weakness in oil this morning. Today's calendar is light in terms of economic announcements. There is the Fed meeting minutes that's coming out this week, and that's going to be the highlight of the week. Because remember, that's going to be a key one. On the earnings front, you got Delta Airlines, ConAgra Brands, Levi Strauss, Simply Good Foods, PriceSmart, WD-40. They're all scheduled to release this week. And then, then turning our attention over to Europe. I mean, you look at the DAX. The DAX is showing a nice move higher. I mean, the DAX is up 0.88% or 210 points. You got to remember, industrial production in Germany rose 1.2% month over month in May, which beat the expectations of no change and rebounding from, a drop in industrial production in April. So, that's very positive, and that's why you're seeing that DAX move higher. And then you have the FTSE, which is essentially trading flat. And flat is good for the FTSE because that index is heavily weighted with oil stocks, and oil stocks are trading lower this morning due to that OPEC announcement. And in Paris and France, the market's up 0.29%. There are media reports out there saying that the U.S. and the EU are making progress on trade talks, and they could result in a framework of a trade agreement, which could be announced this week. I mean, President Trump wants to declare victories, and right now he's on a roll. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear some trade agreements being announced, possibly from India, possibly from the EU. So we'll have to wait and see what happens this week, but there could be some positive movement on trade talks this week. And then we're turning our attention over to oil. And, oil, you got WTI at $66.96 a barrel. You got Brent at $68.71 a barrel. OPEC agreed to raise oil output by 548,000 barrels per day starting in August, and that's a big uptick. Turn our attention over to the Asian markets last night, and we did see, the Nikkei fell 223 points at 0.56%. There's some weakness in autos and paper stocks, which moved lower. Hong Kong was essentially flat. It fell 0.12%. A little weakness in tech and consumer stocks due to the tariff comments out of the White House. China was higher by 0.02%. It's they're kind of, that market's a little cautious because of some economic releases that are due out, including inflation and trade data, which is expected to provide fresh insights into the impact of the U.S. China trade relations. But that's what I have for you in terms of morning market update, Emily.
Bill, as we get back to trading on this Monday after this holiday weekend, Trump really is the headline here, as you mentioned, keeping that Trump alert on all day between passing the big, beautiful bill ahead of the holiday, signing that over the weekend, and then, these tariff developments, keeping track of those headlines. You did mention it is light on the earnings front and economic front as we start the week, but we will jump in just to make sure we don't miss anything. Bill, anything to note in terms of earnings action?
All I can say is we're going to get earnings from Delta Airlines, ConAgra Brands, Levi Strauss, Simply Good Foods, PriceSmart, AZZ, and WD-40 this week. That's really where the highlights will be. But today there's nothing because then that's not unusual. We're in that period of time. We're in that lull before earnings season kicks off, which really does happen next week. And so this week is pretty light. And today there's nothing significant coming out, Emily.
As those earnings pick up, we will be sure to follow that right here on NewsWare's Trade Talk, tracking those. And as you mentioned, making sure we're on top of the start of the next earnings season, keeping on top of things. The highlight here when it comes to economic events, you did mention it, those Fed meeting minutes. But when it comes to the economic calendar today, also another area that is a little light. But Bill, what should we be watching when it comes to economic events?
Yeah, it's light on the economic reports today. There's nothing significant. And, you're right. The focus this week will be on the Fed meeting minutes and maybe the July 9th tariff deadlines. Those are going to be two important catalysts. I mean, the market will be looking for clues in like the internal dynamics of the Fed because, you got to remember Governor Bowman and Christopher Waller, they both suggested now that they're leaning towards a rate cut in July. They didn't change their dot plot expectations, and that's an issue for me because they're leaning toward a rate cut in July, but they still have only penciled in 2 rate cuts for 2025. So if there's definitely going to be one at the end of the year, and September or October is possible, but you're going to tell me it's going to be July and the end of the year. I mean, it is possible, but I think that when you start changing that, you're kind of adding a third third rate cut to your calendar, but they didn't do that. So I kind of think that was more political maneuvering. Their comments there, and Powell did say that he would have already started cutting rates if it wasn't for the Trump tariffs, which they're still waiting on additional data, and the stockpiling that went on ahead of time is really confusing those numbers because tariffs do cause inflation. So we'll have to wait and see. But right now, the Fed meeting minutes is going to be the key economic report for the week ahead, Emily.
Well, we're doing this dance between tariff talks and inflation, watching these interest rates. And as you mentioned, these meeting minutes could be a catalyst, looking for clues in what the Fed may be doing next. And keeping track of other clues in the market. One area that there's always something to be watching are the other data, news, and information coming out of different sectors and segments. You open your NewsWare every morning and you're looking at things like merger news, guidance news, shareholders meetings, buyback news, and catalyst calls. You're looking at your stocks grouped together like your FANG stocks and your Dow 30 stocks. So Bill, what else do you see as possibly moving the markets today?
I'm just doing a quick data check right here. I got 15 Dow stocks lower this morning, but I got 13 higher and I got 2 unchanged. So, we'll have to wait and see. But the bank stocks, Amazon's showing a little positive action. Everything else is slightly lower with the exception of Tesla, which is getting hit about, 6%. Apple, It's trading off by about 0.3%, but their smartphones in China grew for the first time in 2 years. They're still way behind Hunwei, but I mean they did start to turn around a little bit, so that's kind of a positive. Amazon's trading higher, up 0.5% this morning. You got to remember, Prime Day starts tomorrow, and that's typically a good catalyst for the stock. Although this year's Prime Day is not expected to be as robust as other Prime Day sales events, but they extended it. It's now a little bit longer, so this could, ramp up those sales. Now, Target, TGT, they started yesterday, and you know who else? Dick's Sporting Goods, ticker DKS. They started their sales event today. Google, Isomoric Labs is preparing to launch human trials of AI designer drugs. Tesla, Musk has formed his own political party. It's just causing a concern for investors because that kind of indicates he's taken his eye off the ball at Tesla, which has really been in a free fall since he started doing his government work. And if he's doing his own political party, I mean, I don't see him really being the captain of the Tesla brand. So we gotta be a little cautious there. But that's why the stock's selling off this morning. In terms of Dow Jones 30s, Apple, ticker AAPL, they're challenging the $587 million EU fine for allegedly breaching the EU's DMA Act. Boeing, ticker BA, they secured a $2.8 billion contract for strategic satellite communications program. Waiting on some comments from the black box or results from that Air India crash, but you look at Boeing, it's trading higher this morning. That's kind of a positive. In terms of merger news, WNS, William Nancy Sam, Capgemini to buy WNS for $76.50, $76.50 in cash. In terms of guidance news, MOH, Molina Healthcare, they see Q2 adjusted EPS coming in $5.50. Street estimate had it at 621. I mean, that's that's not good for ticker MOH. But I will tell you that MOH is trading higher. It's up 1.43% this morning. No shareholders events. The only thing is, Dick's Sporting Goods, DKS, starting its deal day sales event today. In terms of catalyst calls, ticker CHA, Charlie Henry Apple, Citibank opens up a 30-day upside catalyst watch on the stock today. And that's all I have for you in terms of news hitting the tape this morning, Emily.
This is the type of data that NewsWare delivers daily. It's factual, it's market moving, and our alerting functions bring it to your attention as it happens. Go to www.newsware.com now and sign up for the trial and see for yourself the benefits that professional Newswire delivers. It is now that time of the show for the Trade Talk pick of the day. Bill, what do you have for us to kick off this week?
Yeah, it's an odd day. I'm going to go with Paramount Global, ticker PARA, Paul Apple, Richard Apple. Listen, President Trump sued them for $2 billion over a 60-minute interview that they did with Kamala Harris. $2 billion. They sued them for $2 billion. Now, it was settled for $16 million. It's a wide divergence. So, they didn't do anything wrong. But by settling, they get, Trump off their back. He gets a win. That's what he needs. Gets the FCC off Paramount's back. Now they're able to move forward with that Skydance merger. That's positive for Paramount. So I do think that we're going to see some positive action in the stock today. You look at the action on Wednesday. I mean, 16,000 calls traded versus 1,992 puts. 16,000 versus like 2,000. That's very positive. And open interest is negative though, 254K versus 439K. But the lawsuit's been settled, so that's kind of new news. That's a new development. Major brokers, they're not positive on the stock. I will say that, but the lawsuit has been resolved, so that's kind of like an uptick, of possibilities for the stock. So listen, if I can get into the stock 1280 to 1285, somewhere around there, I think it'll be a good. I think it could be a good play. So that's my pick of the day. Paramount Global, 1280 to 1285 this morning, Emily.
Another pick of the day where you're sort of trading the news cycle, looking to get a gain in Paramount Global today. And coming up, we will do a recap on Thursday's pick of the day before we sign off. We've heard you mention it in the show, so stick with us through that. But first, let's take a look at the current breaking headlines that have hit the tape in our hot off the press segment. Bill, take it away.
FTC Solar, that's ticker FTCI. They entered into a $75 million strategic financing facility. Genius Group, GNS, Grace, Nancy, Sam, they increased Bitcoin treasury target to 10,000 Bitcoins. And remember, next week is Crypto Week. Okay, what Crypto Week is, it's when the house designated next week is Crypto Week. So there could be some reason to want to be long crypto going into next week when they start when the House starts taking up some of those oversight bills. Trump says higher tariffs will kick in August 1. That's possible. Alibaba, ticker BABA, its instant delivery business is expected to incur losses due to heavy discounting. Alphabet, Google has been hit by an EU antitrust complaint over its AI overviews from a group of independent publishers. Not surprising. BIRK, Birkenstock Holdings, an India court appointed legal representative inspected small-scale factories in recent weeks to see suspected counterfeit Birkenstock footwear. Chevron and ExxonMobil and Hess, arbitrators in a legal dispute between ExxonMobil and Hess, have reached a decision related to the major oil field project in Guyana. The ruling will determine whether Chevron can move forward with its $53 billion planned acquisition of Hess. That's all I'm seeing this morning.
Okay, Bill, before we dive into trading, let's do that check-in on Thursday's pick of the day, which was Boeing. You did mention Boeing during your NewsWare Alerts breakdown. The investors continue to wait on details on that flight data recorders from that Air India crash back in June. You were trading this one ahead of the holiday weekend on Thursday, thinking that there was room to move higher after it has taken a hit since that crash. There was some possible plane delivery news that could be positive. Bill, was your call positive? How did it work out?
Worked out stellar. I mean, listen, the stock opened up at 211.78. Now remember, my entry price was 212. So it opened up lower than my entry price. And then it ran all the way to $217.67, but it closed at $215.92. You look at the stock this morning, it's $216.40. Much better than opening price, and better than my entry price at 212. That's like a 2% move. So, on a $200 stock, that's huge. So yeah, Boeing was a win. That Wednesday call on Boeing was very positive. So yeah, winner, winner, winner.
A win there, Bill, and we will check in with you tomorrow about today's Paramount Global pick of the day. Bill, thank you as always for your expert insight. Join us back here tomorrow and each weekday morning this week at NewsWare's Trade Talk when we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Again, I'm your host, Emily Advani, here with trading anchor Bill Olson. Traders, you know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.